Welcome to Data Leadership for Everyone. I'm your host, Anthony Algman. Everyone needs to harness the power of data. There's a lot involved in making that happen, and this show is here to make it all a little bit easier. Think of this as an audio advice column for all of your data and leadership questions. Our guest today is Thomas Redman. Known as the Data Doc, Tom is the president of Data Quality Solutions. He helps companies and people, including startups, multinationals, executives, and leaders at all levels, chart their courses to data-driven futures. He places special emphasis on quality, analytics, and organizational capabilities. Tom, welcome back to Data Leadership for Everyone.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Anthony. It's been too long.
Seriously, it's been a long time since we had you on the old show at Data Leadership Lessons, and we've stayed in touch throughout. And we were just at a conference, and at that conference, I sat in on your tutorial. And one of the things that you talked about, and I think is as good as any to kind of launch into what we want to talk about today, is you made a real strong point around regular people and their need to be involved with data. Can you talk about that and help us understand who are regular people and what is the hypothesis that underlies that?
Yeah, I mean, that you're right. I am just hammering this point home. I think that, that this sort of unfolded for me over a period of years. And then when I saw it in lots and lots of ways. And I think it's really, really important. Let me just start with one really interesting point. And that is, if I were to ask you who does most data management in companies now, who would you answer?
I would probably say either data analysts or maybe even technology organization folks.
Yeah, well, I think the answer is regular people. And by regular people, by the way, and I think it's not even close. By
Yeah,
regular people, I mean those who do not have data in their title. And
got it.
just, take any person coming into work. Sometimes I think of this person, is in a sales department. And just to do their work, they take the leads data they get from marketing, and it's not fit for purpose. And so they have to clean it up, right? That's data management work. They organize their work. They create spreadsheets. Um, and they do little analyses. And so practically everyone in companies, certainly all knowledge workers at all levels, is doing a bunch of what we would consider to be data work. And if you think about it, I mean, there's not that many data people, analysts, even technologists in companies compared to the numbers of regular people. And just any time I look at it, I find that regular people spend a third, a half of their time doing these mundane data management jobs. Maybe they're not even mundane. The exceptions seem to be those who work in chief financial offices. When I ask chief financial officers how much of their staff's time is spent on data issues, the answer is three-quarters. And if you talk to teams of data scientists, and well, maybe three-quarters of their time is spent on data science. So it is, I believe it is observably true. The percentage may vary from organization to organization, but the vast majority of data work is being done by regular people. They've received no training, no guidance on any of it. And so that's a really important thread. The second thread I want to introduce, and Anthony, I first saw this, it was a while ago, but I started my career at Bell Labs, and I was advising the company on a program to change the way they managed access finances. And so access was AT&T's biggest expense. It was about $20 billion a year, and the details don't matter. But I was invited to a party with some program had rolled out in the Northeast. I was invited to a party on Baltimore Harbor. AT&T could throw good parties, right? Sort of celebrating success. And so I didn't know a lot of the people, and I wandered around and, I'd ask how this approach to data quality, what it had meant to them. And one of the women I asked, looked me straight in the eye, and she moved in close and she said, "Tom, I've worked at this company for 20 years. I've never had any control over anything. right? But this was different. I used my brain. I thought about what was really important. I figured out the way to measure things. I figured out how to build relationships. I figured out how to find and attack root cause of root causes of error, and her enthusiasm was just spilling out, kind of thing, right? And um, and then she said, "And let me tell you about what we did," and on, right, for 20 minutes, telling me about her successes. I didn't pull together how empowering data was for regular people
Hmm.
at that moment. I had to see several other instances of it, right? But sort of like the two streams of thought of why we need regular people are, number one, just observationally, that's where the work is getting done. We can't do good work in data without them. And then, secondly, this idea of data as human empowerment. I am so turned on by that, by that concept. And by the way, I talked to some of my colleagues, and they see the same thing too.
Mhm. So I really think that human empowerment is such a powerful statement. And yet earlier you described that the people that are doing it, and I totally knew, by the way, that I was walking into the trap, but I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
so
sure.
knowledgeably because I knew you needed to make a point. So I just had to, I have to acknowledge that I did that. I did that for all of you listeners.
Well,
But
I
the,
appreciate that too. So yeah.
the human empowerment coupled with the fact that everybody's using data. We get that. You're using data and they're spending a lot of their time trying to make the data suitable for their use. That's what data quality is all about, right? It's about getting it ready to do the things that you want to do with it. And when it's not sufficient coming out of the box, you're going to have to do that some way, and you're at great effort. And on top of it, so you have a lot of work to do. You have this human empower. We know there's importance there, but like you said earlier, it's people don't have any actual training or guidance on how to do it. And we talk about some of that in terms of data governance, but I think a lot of data governance is very hands off. It's like very like, here is a policy, learn about it and do the right thing. But it's not really helping people know to do that, because a lot of times data governance kind of falls into this void where unless you know it even is a thing, you're not looking for it. And it's certainly unlikely to help you a lot, even if you find it. So what is it that we can do? Because it seems like we've created this monster. Data is important. We get it. We're still completely removed from actually solving this.
When you say we, you mean data governors?
Collectively, companies and everybody who's interested in getting this data to be working. So yeah, data governance, I think, is probably a good way of saying it too.
Yeah. Well, so look, there's two fundamental. There's some spin on this, but there's two fundamental ways to try to improve data quality, and one of them is to inspect it in, right?
Mm,
And so essentially, what happens is, I mean, it could be our salesperson comes in, the data is not fit for purpose, and so they try to clean it up, right? A data governor may say, well, I can do that for you. We'll do that in a centralized fashion. And they'll buy a tool and look for errors. And so some of the tools are better at finding errors, but then people basically have to correct those errors, right? And so they're trying to inspect it in. The alternative approach is to build it in and to
mm,
ask the question, well, why are we creating so many errors in the first place? And that then leads to me, the two most fundamental roles in all of data are the data customer and the data creator. and
mm,
and people are observably in these roles every day, large portions of the day, maybe dozens of times of the day. And all I mean by a customer is they're using data that some other person or process or team created, and by a creator, that they are creating data that's used by the next person or team or department, or could even be an application in line. But people don't think of themselves in these roles. And
mm,
so, I got to make these calls, I got to fix up these leads. Instead, an awful lot of what we want people to do in data quality is just become a good customer. You need something, figure out what it is you need, figure out where the data you need is coming from, and sit down with the creators of that data. And so, okay, we're going to have to put some measurements in place. We're going to have to do this and that. But ultimately, we're going to find and eliminate the root causes of data errors. And if you contrast that, I mean, it is so highly federated, Anthony, right? Every person is playing a role. And that's because everybody has separate needs from everybody else. And everybody is creating stuff separate from everybody else. And so this recognition of how individual data is, and you just sort of, we've been horrible about inspecting it in. And even if we were good at it, it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time. And so practically every situation, I don't want to say every situation,
Mhm.
but certainly in my client base, when we get people to step into these roles, they get excited about these roles, and quality improves pretty darn quick.
Hmm. I could see that when people who have felt overlooked or unable to make the impacts that they've wanted to make previously, all of a sudden being given this kind of empowerment, and that I could see why that would resonate with them, where they're saying, "Hey, here's how you can make a real difference, not just for the activities that you have, which we know they're incentive to complete because they're already trying to do those activities and struggling with it, but then also provide added help and benefit to the rest of the organization by getting the data to a better place where it gets a little bit easier for everyone." Is that am I paraphrasing that correctly?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, you want to make it easier for yourself, and part of the deal is you make your life easier, and you help other people make their life easier. I want to pick on one little point, and that is an empowerment,
Yeah.
right? So I've been in the corporate world a long time, and I've always heard about empower people, but so far I've never seen it happen. What happens is that people empower themselves,
Mm.
right? And so you take on these roles of creator and customer. You are empowering yourself. Now, maybe a data program or senior management or whatever makes it easier for you to empower yourself. But I think that's why people have such a thrill about it in it is they are empowering themselves, and they're using their brains in new ways, and they're working with others in new ways, and it's a lot of fun, and certainly it's a lot more fun than coming in and cleaning up somebody else's mess.
Yeah, and that's the thing that has always kind of bothered me about quote unquote traditional approaches to data management or data governance, is that we're all like, "Hey, let's go find the people who seem to know this data best and ask them to go clean it up for everybody else, even though they get no benefit out of it." And that's always bothered me because I'm like, that's not a sustainable
I know.
collection of incentives there, right? So I think if you could first clean it up for yourself and then make it so that that can be used by others, now that's something that can sustain and grow and get people excited to just it makes your day a little bit better, right? It's like everybody's had those days where they've just full of tasks that they have to do but they'd rather not do, and I don't care what your job is, everybody has pieces of that. But when you can actually go and make it so that next time it's going to be a little bit better, I think that's pretty intrinsically motivating.
Yeah, I mean, let's just build on it with a specific example. A lot of really important data happens as the customer, joins the company, right? On sign up,
Mm.
right? Maybe when you go to a health clinic, they're taking your blood pressure and things like that. There's a lot of important data right there, and people are sort of tasked with mindlessly creating that data, but the management doesn't even let them know why. It says,
Mm.
okay, well, you're helping us onboard this customer because later we want to sell them things, or we want to complete regulatory reports, or right, we're going to use this blood pressure medicine you make to decide what medication this person should be on, right? And so it is way more fulfilling. You may still have to do the task, but you see the reason you're doing the task, and then it's okay. Well, oh, maybe I'd better take this blood pressure measurement a little bit more carefully. Maybe I better make sure I understand the protocol. And Anthony, by the way, people are amazing. There is too much in the data space and in digital transformations. People are part of the problem. Well, people are the solution, and point them in the right direction, and they come up with things that are so inventive, that are so clever, and they're happy to share it with others. Um, so yeah, I mean, so like this is really, really a different way of thinking about things. We're not asking you to follow a policy. We're putting you in an interesting space. Empower yourself, and then use your brain.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. I just think for the vast majority of people, that is a way better job description.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, and I'll still ask you, but my original thought was I was going to ask you around. Well, okay, we've figured out. Okay, how do we encourage people to get better at this stuff and start impacting this? What guidance or what help can we give them in doing that effectively? But I think you already touched on it, and it ties into a recent article that you co-wrote for Harvard Business Review, where you're talking about building a kind of data culture, changing an organization's culture in this light. And what you just said kind of highlights, I think, part of the answer that I would expect in my original question is that when you ask people to just be aware, hey, there are other people upstream and downstream that are impacted by this thing that you're doing or that you're asking for, just that awareness alone goes a long way. What else is there, or is that really the crux of how do you get people starting to do the right things?
Well, look, I think each organization is different. The article you're referring to and was written by myself and May Alawish, who's the chief data officer at Gulf Bank, and that article also explains the assignment that we had there.
Mhm.
Her boss had been a banking veteran and seen lots of data programs fail, and his instruction was, hey, I want to do this right. He explicitly said, don't rush, kind of thing. And then we spent a lot of time thinking through, well, what will really resonate with employees at the bank. And I mean, this was in Kuwait. I mean, it turns out that there's a lot of young people
Mm.
coming in. They have jobs in call centers and in branches. And well, we talked to a lot of them. We talked to a lot of more senior people about what will really resonate with these people, and then it's like the ability to empower yourself, seeing where you fit. There, we offered world class training. I mean, everybody's smart enough to know this data stuff is coming. Well, you don't have to be a PhD computer scientist to play. There's a lot of things that you can do. And part of the value proposition there was we're going to give you really, really world class training. And it's, I mean, another thing we did there is we reached out to the HR department and kind of like we in data. Well, change management's important. Frankly, I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not a professional. But it turned out their HR department actually had a change management group, and they really help with lots and lots of little things. Right, I figured out ways to reward people, and corporate communications got some people in the Kuwaiti Times and things like that. Right,
Mm.
so I think when you say the essence of it, I mean, yes, there is a core. We need to figure out what works in a company. We need to help people understand what's expected of them. We need to turn them loose, right? But it's existing in a company, and there's a lot of things around it, and you need to take care of those things too. I want to just say that different. I mean, I do not have the script, the culture change script. Do one, two, three, four. It's
Yeah.
like the main path. By the way, you can't do culture change unless you get everybody involved.
Mhm.
Okay, and so you're going to talk about that. Well, then sooner or later you have to figure out how you're going to do that. And May in particular, I mean, I give her great credit for taking advantage of everything that the company offered her. She figured out how to get the management committee working on her side, right? So naming ambassadors and so forth, right? So anyway, I mean, I know I'm repeating myself here, but like as you say, I mean, the key thing is getting everybody switched on, giving
Mhm.
them the knowledge they need, and in many respects, turning them loose.
Is this kind of, especially on the whole, like, organizational culture is a big swing, right? Like, anything that you're trying to do to fundamentally change your culture may be worthwhile. It's also going to be pretty challenging under the best of circumstances. For someone who doesn't sit in that executive level influence today, is there anything they can do to help their organization move in this direction, or is it where you have to, create a coalition that includes some of the people with the real power in the organization today, or is this something that you could change from the bottom up, or do you really have to have that top down support before you can start really making this impact?
Well, look, I mean, I've worked on a lot of data quality programs often, like in an access management space or something in an upstream problem in an oil
Mhm.
well or market research or whatever it is. So I believe the answer is that this is recursive in the
Mm.
sense that, okay, all you care about is getting better leads data, then you can work on this at that level. Now, you have to have the top people on leads data involved,
Right.
right? But I mean, it can be very, very much bottom up. If you are with in a team or a department or a division of an organization, I mean, again, you can start work at that level, and and do really, really good work. Some years ago, we introduced the term provocateur
Mm.
for people who had started with a specific business problem and figured out how better data helps them solve that business problem, right? And the culture changed along the way. I haven't worked on anything where the purpose was to change the culture.
Right.
The purpose was to solve the business problem, and putting people in new roles and responsibilities. You look 6 months later or a year later and you said, wow, the culture around here is different.
Yeah. It's a great point because why do you want to change the culture? It needs to be something that is relevant to the business. Just changing the culture is a step in that, but it's not the end into itself. So great point on that. While we still have a couple minutes, you have a book coming out, all ties well into the conversation that we're having. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and help the audience know when's it coming out? When is it? How do they get it, and where what to look out for?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Anthony. This book is coming out on July 3rd in most of the world and on July 25th in the United States. It's called People and Data Uniting to Transform Your Organization. And it very much is the first half of this book is really directed at regular people. I am so excited for people who will just man, I've been doing this data management. How could be a better way, and reach on and grab hold. And the book really tries to motivate why it's so important, and give them some, like, here's some first steps. Here's the kind of thing to do. I mean, everybody's familiar with being a customer when they go buy a new car, or they do in lots and lots of venues. Well, you know if you do nothing more than take that thinking into your work, um, and on the data, you're going to do better. Um, the book introduces a concept called the data generation. The
Hmm.
data generation are people who sign up on their own, right? Have the courage to really get in and do this work on data quality, or they may simply just want to become better decision makers. They may want to collaborate with people doing AI. They may want to use what I call small data within their teams. And so over the last couple of years, I and my company, we have tried to get all the key ideas into articles at either Harvard Business Review or Sloan Management Review. And then, with respect to this book, what we have tried to do is really synthesize these into a book length product. So people don't have to go find 20 articles.
That's great, and yeah, clearly, having those articles at your fingertips and having some surrounding context to it, I think would be a huge resource for people, because you read it once and then you kind of lose track of where it goes and you want to refer back to it. So the book is a great way to kind of bring all that stuff together.
Yeah.
And we will certainly include links and any other content in the show notes, so everybody check that out as well. Tom, last question: what's the best way for people to reach you if they have additional follow-up questions or they want to learn more?
Yeah.
How do they do
Thank
that?
you for that. Look, I mean, you can always send email to info@dataqualitysolutions.com. The phone number is +1 732 933 4669. Obviously, I have a LinkedIn profile. I'm really, really easy to find. Um, hey, can I say one more thing, Anthony?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I know, like it's mostly we deal with people in the data community. And while I say I'm excited for regular people, I'm excited for data people too, right? Because most data people, we've had really hard jobs, right? We've had really hard jobs. It's kind of like, without a lot of support and, buried off here and trying to figure out an architecture, try and get people to clean up data. And a better way to think about it is put yourself in the human empowerment mode kind of thing, right? It
Mhm.
is a way, way more fun job. And you'll struggle with it a little bit. And it'll take some time to sort of adjust your head, but it will be way, way better than what you're doing now.
Yeah, that give me chills. But I think you're absolutely right. Tom, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you very much.
And this podcast is data leadership for everyone. But if you need some data leadership for you, I want to help. So send your questions to podcast@dl4e1.com, or my phone number is 773-888-2077 if you'd prefer to text or leave a voicemail. You can find subscription links in all our episodes at dataleadershipforeveryone.com. And until next time, be good to your data, be better to your business, and be best to each other. Now go make an impact.